One of the most famous theorems that we know in mathematics is called the Pythagorean theorem, which states that if you have a right triangle, then use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I have a right triangle, and this is going to be A, and this is going to be B. So this side is A, and this side is B, and then the side that's across from the 90-degree angle is going to be C. C is what we call the hypotenuse. It's the longest side of the right triangle. So whenever we do Pythagorean theorem, you always have to have a right triangle with a side A, with a side B, and a side C, where the side is across from the 90-degree angle, just like so here. So let's go ahead and do some examples. I have, let's see, a right triangle. And this side here is going to be, let's use 3. And this is going to be 4. And I need to figure out what's the length of this side here. So we're just going to go ahead and call that C. So I'm going to use my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And c is what I'm trying to figure out. So since there is no number, it's just the variable, we're going to leave c alone. So this is going to be c squared. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my a, and I'm going to plug in my b. Now, a can be 3 or a can be 4. It doesn't really matter as long as you know what the hypotenuse is, okay? So I can say 3 squared plus 4 squared, and then I can go ahead and take the square root on both sides, or I can just figure out, what 3 squared is. So I can say 9 plus 16, which is equal to c squared, and I can go ahead and combine the two numbers here. So that's going to be 25, right? So 25 is equal to c squared, and in order for me to get c by itself, right, since I have something being squared, in order for me to get rid of this 2, I would have to take the square root on both sides. So if I'm squaring something, well, the inverse of squaring something is taking the square root. And whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. So using my calculator, I can input the square root of 25 and, oops, that's not right. Second, x squared. Then you're going to press 25. And you're going to get c is equal to 5. Okay? Or if you wanted to, rather than just figuring out, in fact, I should have drawn an arrow from here to there. Let me go ahead and rewrite this. So I have 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. I can go ahead and just take the square root on both sides at this stage. Okay? So we know that if I take the square root of c squared, that's just going to give me c. And then I can go ahead and just input the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared. And it's still going to give me the same answer. So c is going to be 5. Okay? All right. So that's going to be our first example. What I want to do now is I want to look at this example. And there's the right angle. This side is going to be 12. This side is going to be y. And this side is going to be 13. And since this 13, the side length of 13 is across from the 90-degree angle, then this side here is going to be C. C being the hypotenuse. So let's go ahead and apply the Pythagorean theorem, because if you're given a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we know what c is. The value of c is 13. So I'm going to replace c with 13. So I should have 13 squared on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So here's A, here's B. You can call this A or B. If you call this A, then this has to be B. If you call this A, then this has to be B. But it doesn't really matter. Just pick one. We're going to call this 12A. So this should be 12 squared plus, here's my y, so it's going to be y squared. And you know the goal here is to solve for y. So what I can do is I can say 12 squared, which is 144, plus y squared equals 13 squared, which is 169. And then I just need to get y squared by itself right now, so I can subtract both sides by 144. So y squared is equal to 25. And I'm going to take the square root, because I need to get rid of the 2. I want to get y by itself. The square root of 25, just like what we did over here, it's 5. So y is equal to 5. Okay? So I want to look at this part here. So I said 12 squared plus y squared equals 13 squared. And I want to get y squared by itself. I can just go ahead and subtract both sides by 12 squared. So I'm left with y squared equals 13 squared minus 12 squared. Okay? This is not going to be 1 squared. Don't think this is 1 squared, because you know for sure that 13 squared is 169 and 12 squared is 144. So it would be 169 minus 144. Okay, so it's not 1 squared. If it's 1 squared, then you would get y squared equals, 1, which is not the same thing. But if you do something like this, if you want to go the faster route, which is totally fine, you can write it like this and then take the square root. Okay, so here's my calculator. Let's go ahead and input this. We know for sure that if I take the square root of y squared, the square root in the 2 will go away. So that's going to be y on the left-hand side equals, then I input exactly all that into my calculator. So that square root of 13 squared minus 12 squared. And there you go. It's going to be 5. Oops. That's not what I want to write. Y equals y. Well, that's true. But what I want to write is y equals 5. All right. Let's do one more example. Let's say that you have a right triangle. Of course, that's what we've been doing. And we're going to call this side 8, this side 7, and this is what I want to find. So the first thing that you want to do is determine what the hypotenuse is. We have a right triangle, so there's my right angle, and the side across from the 90-degree angle will always be my C. So this right here is going to be C, our hypotenuse. So then let's go ahead and apply the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Let's call this 8a. So a is going to be 8, or 8 is going to be a. So 8 squared plus 7 squared equals x squared. Okay, I can figure out what I can figure out what 8 squared is and 7 squared, or I can just go ahead and take the square root on both sides. So then, make sure you use your calculator for this, okay? The common mistake that people make is that when they take the square root of this, the 8 squared plus 7 squared, they would say that, oh, here's the square root, here's the 2, and here's the 2. They will just get rid of the 2's, and it would be just 8 plus 7. Don't do that. That's not true. 8 plus 7 is, what is 8 plus 7? That's going to be 15, right? But look, if I did the square root of 8 squared plus 7 squared, then that's going to be a different story, right? It's not, if you have a square root, then the 2's will go away. The exponent of 2's will go away. It's the square root of 8 squared plus 7 squared. You have to figure out what 8 squared is, and then add that with the 7 squared, then take the square root, and you get what? 10.6, which is our x value.